Welcome to the debate. You know, if you wanted to buy a high-performance server today, you wouldn't ask the vendor for a receipt from 2014 to prove it works, right?
No, obviously not. You'd want to know what it can do right now.
Exactly. You'd ask, what is the processing power today? Yet when it comes to the absolute most expensive, vital asset in any organization, which is human talent, we still demand a 4-year university degree from decades ago as proof of competence.
Well, but a university degree isn't just a receipt. I mean, sure, it serves as a historical proxy, but it's a universally recognized signal. It gives employers this comforting baseline of assumed cognitive competence and problem-solving capability.
The problem is that when you actually step into the modern labor market, that proxy is fundamentally breaking down. I mean, the nature of work is undergoing this massive seismic shift, mostly driven by the rapid deployment of AI and shifting demographics.
Right, the landscape is changing completely.
It is. So today we're examining the shifting currency of human capital. Specifically, should companies prioritize non-degree credentials over traditional university degrees?
And we have some really fascinating new data to anchor this. We're looking at extensive labor market analyses, including that recent Burning Glass Institute and 110 report on what they call credential fluency. We're also pulling from McKinsey's Future of Work models and looking at international skills-first policy frameworks.
And my stance on this is that prioritizing non-degree credentials is, well, it's an urgent competitive necessity. It's the only practical way for companies to unlock overlooked talent and keep pace with technological change. Traditional multi-year degree cycles are just, frankly, obsolete.
And I will argue that discarding the degree is entirely premature. The non-degree credential market is plagued by profound quality issues right now. Plus, traditional degrees remain vastly superior signals for the complex cognitive skills that humans uniquely need in an AI-augmented workforce.
Let me start by outlining exactly why the traditional degree-based playbook is broken. We are operating in an environment where technical skills have a half-life measured in months.
Months, not years.
Right. By the time a computer science student graduates, half of the specific knowledge they acquired freshman year is literally already obsolete.
Well, I agree the specific tools change.
But corporate applicant tracking systems still use that 4-year piece of paper as a rigid gatekeeper. And the demographic reality of that is staggering. According to the U.S. Labor Department, 58% of the prime-age U.S. workforce lacks a 4-year degree.
58%.
Yes, companies are systematically screening out the vast majority of the workforce for roles they are perfectly capable of performing. The solution to this is credential fluency.
Before we go further, we should probably define what credential fluency actually looks like in practice, because it's a buzzword right now.
Sure, it is. When we say credential fluency, we aren't just talking about an HR manager, recognizing a certificate. It's a fundamental rewiring of how a company assesses capability. It's the ability to validate and hire based on specific, targeted non-degree credentials.
Like an AWS Certified Solutions Architect badge or something like that.
Exactly. Or a Salesforce Administrator badge. A credential signals what someone knows today. It's live, portable proof of mastery. If companies don't prioritize this, they're just artificially constraining their talent pools while complaining about talent shortages.
Well, I approach this from a completely different angle. While the specific technical software we use updates rapidly, the foundational capabilities required to actually add value in an AI-driven workforce do not change that fast.
Foundational capabilities like what exactly?
Like complex problem structuring, logical reasoning, and the ability to synthesize disparate information. These are the skills that are increasingly essential. McKinsey's data shows a massive impending shortage in these advanced cognitive skills. They predict a deficit of 85 million talented people by 2030 globally.
Okay, well, why do you assume those skills can only be forged in a 4-year university?
Because these are deeply multifaceted capabilities. They are cultivated through sustained intellectual rigor, peer debate, and the structural challenges of a university environment. And we have to look at the reality of the alternative you're proposing here.
The credential market?
Yes. The non-degree credential market is not some streamlined meritocracy. It is a chaotic landscape of expensive noise. As of 2024, there were over 1.1 million distinct credentials available in the U.S. alone.
And a lot of those are highly specific to niche tools, which is exactly what employers need.
But how does an employer parse them? Data from the Credential Value Index shows that only about 1 in 8 of these credentials actually produces a meaningful wage or career boost. That is a 12.5% success rate.
That's a matter of curation, though.
But when we talk about a university degree, we are talking about a trusted macro credential. Expecting companies to abandon that stable signal in favor of an unregulated, highly variable micro-credential market is an incredibly risky proposition.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on that noise. I think the signal is actually much clearer than you're suggesting.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think of a university degree like a map printed in 2010. A non-degree credential is a live GPS update. Yes, the map is theoretically comprehensive. It shows you the broad topography of a discipline. It proves you can read coordinates.
Which is pretty important.
It is, but the GPS actually tells you how to navigate the specific enterprise software your company deployed yesterday. Look at the tech sector's quiet adoption of these credentials. Tech firms rarely require credentials in their formal job postings, but they hire for them at the highest rates.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why that analogy breaks down for me.
Go for it.
A GPS only guides you to one highly specific destination. A map teaches you how to orient yourself, how to understand the terrain, and most importantly, how to navigate entirely new landscapes when the road completely disappears.
But people need to know how to do the job in front of them right now. Sure, but when generative AI automates the very task that the GPS was guiding you toward, the map reader is the one who can pivot and understand the broader system. And if your GPS theory were true across the board, the data would reflect it globally, but it doesn't.
What do you mean? Tech is hiring this way constantly.
Yes, but outside of highly specialized IT functions, there is a massive implementation gap. When companies formally drop degree requirements, they only see a meager 2 percentage point increase in hires with non-degree credentials.
2% is still an increase.
It's statistically positive, but practically negligible. Hiring managers simply do not trust this wild west of 1.1 million credentials. They literally don't know how to evaluate a 6-week coding boot camp against a weekend online seminar. Oh, come on. You're looking at that 2 percentage point bump and blaming the credential itself. I'd argue that metric doesn't prove the credentials fail as signals. It proves that corporate applicant tracking systems and human hiring biases are broken.
How so? The companies explicitly drop the requirement. The door is open.
The door is theoretically open, but the hallway is entirely blocked. It's like trying to plug a USB-C cable into a floppy disk drive.
A floppy disk drive?
Seriously, the data on the cable is fantastic, but the legacy receiver has no idea how to read it. Most corporate ATS platforms were built decades ago with Boolean search parameters designed exclusively to capture degree data.
So you're saying it's basically just a software limitation?
It's software and process. A recruiter types in BA Business, and the system instantly filters out 500 people, even if 200 of them hold a current verified certification in the exact software the company uses. The systems literally lack the database fields for a credential issuer or a certification ID.
Okay, but even if we update the software...
Wait, let me finish the thought on the companies that actually do update it, because it proves the point. Look at credential-fluent leaders like Procore Technologies or LinkedIn. They don't just drop the degree, they explicitly map specific credentials to business needs.
They map them directly to the role.
Yes. They break down a senior developer role into 15 competencies and map an AWS credential to 8 of those. The result is faster hiring cycles, lower training time, and significantly higher retention.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered the enormous, often prohibitive effort required to build that specific credential infrastructure?
It's an investment, sure.
You are asking every individual corporate HR department to act as its own accreditation board. The Skills First policy data shows the systemic challenges here: signaling failures, coordination deficits. A university degree outsources that heavy lifting?
By outsourcing it to an institution that takes 4 years and thousands of dollars?
But it's a prepackaged macro credential. Expecting a mid-sized manufacturing firm or a regional bank to continually validate the rigor of 1.1 million credentials is an operational nightmare. That's why only 1 in 8 works out. Anyone can record a few videos, put a quiz at the end, and call it a certification.
And that is exactly why the employer's role is shifting. In what analysts call the super worker era,
HR has to move from being an administrative filing cabinet to a value orchestration center. They don't evaluate a million credentials, they curate a targeted list.
Which, again, ties the worker exclusively to a specific tool.
But it gains the company access to a highly motivated talent pool. Relying on degrees because they are pre-packaged is basically outsourcing your talent strategy to institutions that are fundamentally misaligned with the speed of business.
I wouldn't say they're misaligned.
Really? Look at AI integration. A tiny fraction of higher ed institutions currently prioritize applied, hands-on AI proficiency across their general ed requirements. Why trust a degree from a place that isn't teaching the tech that's automating 70% of your workflows?
Because the degree isn't supposed to teach the specific software workflow. That's the crux of our disagreement here. The degree teaches the cognitive architecture required to understand the workflow's purpose, its limitations, and its broader risks.
And you don't think a rigorous credential can teach that?
I think a vendor-specific credential is fundamentally incentivized not to. If we rely solely on a credential issued by the very companies selling the software, we risk building a workforce trained exclusively on efficiency gains. They know how to make the machine run faster, but they lack the broad context to ask if the machine is processing the right data.
That's a fair concern about operational thinking.
We need human beings who can oversee the automated systems, not just operate them. A narrow credential focuses on the how. A comprehensive education forces you to grapple with the why.
I hear that. But if we stick to the degree requirement as the exclusive gateway for those oversight roles, we aren't just boxing people in, we are locking them out entirely. And that brings us to the profound systemic inequity of the traditional degree requirement.
Well, I agree equity is crucial, but lowering the barrier to entry.
It's not lowering the barrier. It's changing the nature of the barrier from one of pedigree to one of verified skill. Degrees inherently harbor historical and economic bias. They demand a person step out of the workforce or take on massive debt for 4 contiguous years.
That is definitely a structural problem with higher ed.
Right. And when you use a proctored objective credential instead, you shift the compensation discussion away from subjective interview assessments where pedigree bias lives and ground it in the verified market value of a skill.
And what does the data actually show on that shift?
The equity benefits are staggering. 1 year after earning a high-value credential, Black workers see an annual wage gain of $2,116. Hispanic workers see a gain of $1,694. Women see an annual gain of $1,600.
That's significant.
Because the credential strips away the ambiguity. It is a bridge to economic mobility for the 58% of the workforce systematically locked out of the interview room.
I completely acknowledge those wage gains, and addressing historical pay disparities through verified skills is a massive step forward. But we have to look critically at the long-term trap this could create for those very same workers.
Wait, how is a higher wage and a better job a trap?
Because of how entry-level work is shifting. Generative AI is aggressively automating the purely task-driven, routine work that boot camps typically train people to do. The entry-level roles that survive require analysis and strategic judgment right out of the gate.
Which credentials can adapt to teach much faster than a university curriculum committee can?
Perhaps, but look at the corporate structure it creates. If companies push the 58% of workers without degrees into narrowly defined technical tracks while reserving leadership paths for university graduates, what happens?
You're worried about a class divide?
Exactly. We risk cementing a two-tiered, polarized labor market. Disguised as skills-first innovation, it could actually limit long-term career mobility by denying those workers the educational signal required to move into management once their technical skill is automated.
I'd actually push back heavily on the idea that credentials limit mobility. I mean, look at the healthcare sector data from Burning Glass. A medical assistant can earn a specialized credential in phlebotomy, enabling them to progress into higher-paying roles without stopping work to get a 4-year biology degree.
But that's within a highly structured, regulated field where technical skills build linearly.
It applies to the corporate world too, though. We are moving toward a model of mastery-based learning. Workers are building a career mosaic,
A degree is static. You earn it once, and it depreciates. Credentials allow for the perpetual reinvention of the workforce.
Perpetual reinvention sounds incredibly appealing in theory, but the cognitive endurance required to constantly learn, unlearn, and relearn complex systems is exactly the muscle forged in a comprehensive educational environment.
But again, high skill doesn't intrinsically mean university educated.
It often means possessing learning agility, which is a byproduct of broad intellectual exploration. The 2030 projections suggest up to 12 million workers in Europe and the US will need to change jobs entirely. A narrow credential in last year's software doesn't prepare a worker for a complete occupational transition.
I hear that, but that robust educational foundation doesn't have to come exclusively packaged in a continuous 4-year block that costs $250,000.
Fair point.
We are running up against our time limit, so let me summarize my position. In the race for talent, waiting for a traditional degree cycle to catch up to the realities of AI integration is just an economic dead end.
And filtering out capable people is obviously a problem.
Exactly. By operationalizing credential fluency, by building the infrastructure in our ATS platforms and our hiring managers to identify what someone knows right now, companies can access a highly motivated talent pool. The traditional map is simply out of date.
And my summary would be this. Until the Wild West non-degree credential market matures significantly beyond its current 12.5% success rate, discarding the university degree is dangerous.
Even with the ATS challenges?
Especially because of them. Expecting HR departments to accurately filter millions of micro-credentials without standard accreditation is an operational fantasy. A GPS update is ultimately useless if you lack the fundamental orientation to navigate when the signal drops.
Ultimately, I think the most robust organizations won't treat this as a binary choice. They'll likely need to build bridges between both worlds, blending the targeted precision of non-degree credentials with the foundational architecture of traditional degrees.
I think that synthesis is exactly where the future lies. There is certainly much more to explore in the shifting landscape of workforce policy, and we'll need to keep watching how companies integrate human judgment with machine capability.
Absolutely. As we wrap up, think back to that server analogy we started with. Are you judging a person's capability on an old receipt, or are you building the systems required to measure their current utility? The answer to that question will likely define your competitive advantage. Thank you for listening to The Debate.